your brain is better on the bike?
Through the work that Outride has done, it's demonstrated scientifically that riding a bike has a beneficial impact on focus and attention, and that has led to a body of scientific findings that substantiate what we've all felt along the way. I feel better, I can focus better, my mood, my attention, my focus is all improved by riding a bike. Now we know it scientifically.
What inspires me is to make a difference, for us to make a difference, and to see people out riding our bikes and going, hey, I love this.
I will outride the feeling of not being good enough. It's important to be able to outride that feeling and just to know that you're not alone, that there's many people taking care of you and caring about you. Keep outriding this feeling, and everybody is here to support you.
My favorite thing about biking is that I get to meet new people and I get to ride at my full speed. Instead of slowing down, I can just be me and go fast.
Always when I step on the bike, I'm trying to get this calm mindset where I'm having the space to dream. It really helps me to be free in the mind and feel good in the body.
The bike program is honestly amazing. It gives kids the ability to do bikes around, talk to friends, just have fun.
I'm in the middle of the city, but I'm in the best part of the city. Been having a great time because I'm really here, because it's a kinetic experience as well as it's a mental exercise. And it just, for me, I get up here and concentration comes back. The monkeys stop with their chorusing, and it just clears my mind, man. So, and it does it for everybody.
The bike really is such a simple tool, but the more we learn, the more we realize just how powerful a tool it really is. And, not just for physical health, but for emotional well-being, social connection, and a theme we'll hear today, overall brain health across the lifespan. We're learning that when we go for a ride, you're not just strengthening muscles, improving fitness, riding for just transportation of recreation, but we're really going out there and literally strengthening our brain, which is a really, really exciting concept. And as Mike just said, opening up that video, we really see that your brain can be better on a bike. And over the years, I'm sure many of you have seen the evolution of the Outride Summit, and we've hosted many over the years. And this year, we're really excited to have our very first Outride Day. And I think what makes Outride Day so special is that we're really bringing together really amazing groups of people. The people who are, generating the research behind this work, the people who are putting it into practice. We have our next generation of middle school teachers here, ready to take biking back all across the country. And we also have people here today whose lives have been dramatically changed by the power of the bike. And so we're really working to bring this research to life, making a commitment that what we will learn will reach not just academic journals, but will reach classrooms, healthcare settings, families, and communities everywhere. Because really our goal is not just to understand why the bike works, although as a researcher at heart, I really love to nerd out about the data. It's ultimately to help more people experience those benefits for themselves. And when I really look around this room and see the amazing mix of people here today, it really gives me hope, because we're ultimately helping work towards that goal of really working towards helping everyone thrive through the power of a bike. So I really want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you for being a part of this first Outride Day. And now I'd like to pass it over to Ben Capron from Specialized Bicycle Components, our founding partner in this work, because really we couldn't do all this work and it wouldn't be possible without them. So join me in welcoming Ben.
Thanks, Esther. Oh, it works. My name is Ben Capron, and riding bikes saved my life. More on that in a second. But first, I really want to welcome you all here on behalf of our founder, Mike Sinyard, our CEO, Armin Landsgraf, and the entire worldwide Specialized team. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you all here and to partner with you in this amazing work that you're doing. I remember in 2012, Mike Sinyard saying, Ben, I just read this article, and it was in Bicycling Magazine, and it was entitled, Cycling is My Ritalin. And Mike read it, and the first thing he said was, I think I have ADHD. And he had never been diagnosed with ADHD, but in the article it talked about it a little bit, and he had done some more research, and he said, I've always had a hard time focusing. I've always had a hard time sitting still, except when I've ridden my bike. And I see nodding heads in the audience. It's a part of my story too. I'm sure it's shared amongst many of you, and many cyclists who I know also share the same symptoms, let's say, and have kind of self-medicated on the bicycle. Because now we know through the research that we've done together and many others doing important work, that when we ride a bike, we have the ability to focus better, to be more present, to find what T.S. Eliot called that still point in the turning world, what Demi spoke about when she says her mind gets quiet, what Harrison Ford says when the monkeys stop their chorusing. I love that so much. And so what Mike said after that was, you know, this ADHD is a real issue. It's a real challenge. I can realize the benefit in this. There was a researcher who was in the article. Mike called the researcher in classic Mike Sinyard's fashion and said, how can we, you know, get the word out on this? And the researcher said, well, we can do more work on it. We can help communicate it. And from that, a series of events happened which resulted in a nonprofit at that time called the Specialized Foundation, which later in 2014 became Outride, probably history that most of you know. But it's very deeply rooted in Mike's personal story and in really what our purpose is at Specialized. Our purpose statement is on the screen now, to pedal the planet forward. And in shorthand, what that means is to really help people and the planet flourish through bicycles and through cycling. And so there could be no more clear example of that than Outride and the work that you're all doing. Because we ride bikes, we know how we feel, we know our minds work better, we know our bodies work better, we know we connect with each other, ourselves, and nature better when we ride bikes. But now we have both the research to substantiate that with evidence, as well as, again, because of the work that you all do, over 500,000 kids now that have been through the Riding for Focus program, who I'm sure many of you could tell many stories about individual lives that have been changed because of the power of the bicycle. And then now we've expanded to really recognize that it's not just the young, but even the odds of dementia decrease significantly when we continue riding later in life. And so, you know, I was diagnosed not with ADHD, it wasn't a term when I was a kid, but with hyperactive disorder, and then also dyslexia. So for me personally, things like school and reading and sitting still in a classroom were close to impossible. And the stigma of going into special education added a layer of ridicule and othering to my experience growing up. But riding a bike, and before that a big wheel, and before that climbing up the lattice of a restaurant. My mom says that when I was still crawling, couldn't yet walk, I once climbed up a lattice of this Italian restaurant. I always loved to move. And what I found in that was freedom in going into the world. But really, ultimately, what I've come to realize was it was the freedom of being able to help my mind quiet down, because things go pretty fast up there otherwise. And so just a quick note to say from me, from Mike, from all of us here, the work that you're doing and the work that we're doing together is the work that the world needs. Because at this time, when there's such an inversion of truth and incredible technologies that can be used both ways, like AI and screens that can co-opt our awareness and attention, we need more than ever the bicycle to be present in modern humans' lives so we can quiet our mind, we can connect from the inside out and navigate towards a bit more human, a bit more sane, and a bit happier existence for all beings on the planet. So just to say thank you so much. Looking forward to the summit and later the day together. And I think Lauren is up next. With that, let me introduce Lauren up to the screen, up to the stage to talk to you a bit about the day.
All right, thanks so much for that amazing welcome, both Esther and Ben. And we're so stoked to have you all here today to celebrate first the Outride Summit and then Outride Day. And I really want to start kicking it off to our speakers because we have such an incredible lineup today, and I'm really curious myself to learn about what they have to say. But just a little bit about me. I'm running Outride's research arm. I've been with Outride a little over 2.5 years now and have just been really grateful to be able to do this work. And as we learned, Outride is expanding our work across the lifespan to better understand how cycling is impacting brain health and well-being, especially for older adults. So from things like slowing cognitive decline to fertilizing the brain to even increasing the size of a structure in your brain called the hippocampus, which controls your memory, cycling can have really, really powerful effects on the brain. And before my role at Outride, I was actually studying Alzheimer's disease. And I must say that when I first met our keynote presenters, Claire and Jean, I couldn't wait for the day they'd be presenting because they're going to be talking about one of my favorite studies that's been released in the last year. So we're going to have Jean kick it off first, followed by Claire Day. But a little bit about Jean. He's a volunteer community educator and board member with the Alzheimer's Association Northern California chapter. His interest in and dedication to the mission of the association is to honor his late husband, for whom he was his primary caregiver following his diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. As a native Californian, he was born and raised in Chico. He attended UC Berkeley, go Bears, and UC Davis, also some Aggie, and earned a BA degree in zoology. He is retired from 40 years in risk management in the workers' comp field, and he's an avid cyclist in his free time. And following Jean, we'll have Claire Day. Claire has been on the staff of the Alzheimer's Association since 2001. She's the Chief Mission and Program Strategy Officer at the Northern California and Northern Nevada chapter, and as such, oversees all care and support, DEI operations, and research initiatives. She's got more than 25 years of experience as a family and professional educator in dementia care, and in 2018, she was appointed to the chapter lead for the U.S. study to protect brain health through lifestyle interventions to reduce risk, or the U.S. Pointer study, which is this one that I'm really excited about. And she's in California in partnership with UC Davis. So we're so excited to learn from you, both Jean and Claire. So first we'll have Jean come and take it away.
Thank you, Lauren, for that very warm welcome. And welcome, everybody. This is a terrific event that I'm really happy to be a part of. Thank you to Outride and Specialized for putting this all together. When I was asked to participate in today's program, I was excited to share my involvement in the two activities that occupy much, maybe most of my time in retirement. That is, as a volunteer community educator with the Alzheimer's Association, and that I pedal 135 miles a week on my road bike. In 2011, the world as I knew it changed in an unexpected way. That's when my late husband of 33 years, Art Curtis, was diagnosed with both Alzheimer's dementia and vascular dementia, a progressive and fatal brain disease. I was still working full-time in my career as a workers' compensation risk manager and was completely unprepared for the challenges of being his primary caregiver. Over time, the responsibilities of taking care of a loved one with dementia can become increasingly demanding and unpredictable, not to mention the sense of loss and grief over the change in the nature of the relationship from spouses to care partners. Caregiver stress can negatively affect one's own health. And I experienced many of the warning signs: exhaustion, lack of focus, we heard that already, irritability, poor nutrition, and insufficient quality sleep. My lack of physical exercise resulted in excessive weight gain, high blood pressure, and emotional swings. I knew that I had to break that cycle. Did I say cycle? As in bicycle? I had not ridden my bike since my college days and decided that physical exercise was one thing I could do to immediately begin improving my health and my caregiving role. I'd like to note here that a few years before my husband's diagnosis, I was diagnosed with a rare progressive neuromuscular condition that resulted in the loss of nerve fiber and muscle mass in my lower legs and hands. My feet, my lower legs and hands. I wear leg braces and I use a cane to help with balance and coordination. Long-distance walking and hiking, as I was once accustomed to, were no longer options for exercise. Because of those now permanent physical limitations, I wasn't sure if I could even ride a bike again. But I went to a reputable bike shop that has an indoor test track to find out. It was as if I had never stopped riding. Even with my new limitations, it felt great to be back on those wheels. I went home with a new bike that day, and I haven't stopped since. I haven't stopped riding since. I'm happy to say that the experts at the bike shop fitted me with a specialized roll model. Believe me, not having been part of the cycling world or the cycling culture, I was really not familiar with the brand. I've since graduated to a specialized Cirrus, which has given me over 30,000 miles of satisfying rides and still going strong. It's been 10 years since I started riding again. Back then, my expectation was that if I rode a couple times a week for 20 or 30 minutes, that would be a good and realistic start to a new routine that I could fit into my already full schedule. The reality was far better than I could ever have imagined. I loved my rides and couldn't wait for the next one. In those first days of returning to cycling, I experienced remarkably rapid improvement in my sense of well-being. In today's program, you're going to be hearing much more about the science and the research surrounding the correlation between brain health and physical activity, bike riding in particular. Caregivers often hear the important advice to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. That can be easier said than done when their focus is on the person they're caring for. For me, cycling became a great way to take care of myself. My husband's dementia had progressed to the moderate stage of the disease by the time I began cycling. My rides allowed me to get outside in the fresh air and concentrate on something that I found truly enjoyable. Neighbors were especially helpful looking after Art when I went for rides. Cycling required that I use my brain power to safely and comfortably navigate my route. There wasn't room for the anxieties and worries of caregiving to dominate my thoughts, those monkeys that Harrison was talking about. Those rides allowed me to experience periods of joy and pleasure. The most immediate and positive effect that I noticed after several weeks of consistent cycling was an improvement in my mental outlook, and my energy level returned to my usual upbeat self. I was sleeping better, and the unhealthy weight gain I had experienced over the course of several years steadily and fairly quickly began to reverse. My rides soon progressed from a few miles at a time to 15, then 25, and now 40-mile rides through the beautiful Sonoma County countryside where I live. From my own riding experience, I have learned how many benefits cycling provides to brain and body health. After my husband died in 2018, and after I retired, I decided to volunteer for the wonderful Alzheimer's Association. I wanted to use my experience to contribute to their mission of supporting those facing dementia as they did for us. We don't want anyone to face a dementia diagnosis alone. There is help. I spend several hours every month now presenting a variety of dementia-related educational and informational programs to a diverse cross-section of community organizations, groups, clubs, faith-based organizations, private companies, and special interest groups of all kinds. A current favorite program we present is called Building Brain Healthy Habits. Let's see if I can switch the slide. Well, I went too far now. I guess you have to point it at someone. This slide from that program shows 10 healthy habits for the brain. When I started riding my bike again, I wasn't aware of the science and research that has advanced in this area. But I readily saw that many of these healthy habits are easily achieved through bike riding. While regular socialization is not specifically listed on this chart, we do know that it also is an important element in promoting brain health. And cycling can be an activity easily enjoyed along with others. Cycling was a turning point for me. It provided great relief from a stressful period, and it replaced my sense of helplessness with hopefulness. Combined with the support, guidance, and resources provided by the Northern California chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, cycling became a powerful and lasting solution to relieving some of the burden of being a caregiver. When I began my volunteer work, I told my colleagues at the association that as important as fundraising is for nonprofit organizations, that was not my skill nor my interest area. But what do you know? Cycling even gave me an opportunity to do just that. At the Alzheimer's Association, we have something called Do What You Love to End Alzheimer's. It's a do-it-yourself fundraising program. You can turn anything you love, hiking, gaming, baking, or hosting a party, into a fundraiser. So every year, I pick a different destination where I can spend 3 days of solo rides, totaling 100+ miles, to raise awareness and raise funds for the cause of ending Alzheimer's and all other dementia. It has become an annual adventure that I really look forward to. And on that note of silver lining, I want to thank you for allowing me to share my story in hopes that it will serve as an example of the power of cycling in this exciting era of brain science, research, and treatment. Thank you, thank you. And now it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce Claire Day of the Alzheimer's Association, my friend, my mentor, and a fantastic leader in the area of Alzheimer's.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gene. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting the Alzheimer's Association to provide you with a little bit of an update on the actual research behind some of these lifestyle interventions. It's an honor for me to be here with Gene. And most importantly, we all have a story to tell. Today's story is really going to focus on lifestyle interventions, but for me, cycling story became that of a little bit of a lifeline for my dad, who in 2015 became a widow and living alone, and in 2016 had what he calls a very small heart attack. He was alone in Florida, and he knew he needed to do something after his after he was medically cleared, and he turned to cycling in his neighborhood. For him, it was something that he could do even at He was about 77 at that time, and today he's a very independent 87-year-old, and I firmly believe that it's because of what cycling did for him that he's doing so well in this next decade. So we know that Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia are on the rise. This is really just a quick screenshot to show you why it's so important that we talk about the connection between good brain health and good heart health. About 25% of our blood that pumps from every heartbeat goes to our brain. So it does make sense that what's good for the heart is good for the brain. But it's not just the blood flow. There is actual research and evidence behind it. And we know that there are things that put us at, what did you do to do? I did it so well the first time. There we go. We know that there are things that put us at advanced or at increased risk of developing dementia. Now, raise your hand if today is the first time you're hearing that you're supposed to eat right and exercise. We all know we're supposed to do it, and there are those things on the right-hand side of the screen, like the fact that we're all getting older every day, and that age is still today the biggest risk factor of Alzheimer's disease, that we can't change, those non-modifiable risk factors. We can't change our genes, and having a certain genotype does put you at an increased risk. And we can't change our race or ethnicity, also things that put you at an increased risk. If you're African American, twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's. Latino, 1.5 times as likely. We can't change our gender. Women are more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. But then there's this lovely left-hand side of our screen that we have started to see some really emerging evidence to help us understand how exactly it impacts our brain. So what I'm going to share with you is a couple of studies that really illustrate how all of these things like physical exercise, I focus mostly on the physical exercise today, but there have been individual studies linking the right diet, around cognitive exercise, and other things like good sleep that all contribute to decreasing our risk. And then I'm going to finish up by talking about the US Pointer study. So let's talk a little bit about exercise. And there are tons of, I see, you have to hold it. My future speakers, you just have to hold it for a second. There are tons of individual studies that highlight the importance of exercise. I picked two. This first study, the Exert trial, the reason I picked this one is it focused on people who already had cognitive decline. They had something called mild cognitive impairment, those early cognitive changes in someone who might be experiencing some of those cognitive changes. And what they did with this group is they randomized people into two arms. They did an aerobic arm, which for this study actually was treadmill, walking on the treadmill, versus a stretch and balance arm of the study. And what they found was that at the 12-month mark, neither group, neither the stretching and balance group or the aerobic exercise group, showed any cognitive decline at the 12-month mark. Now, the reason I like to include this one is because not everybody can get on a treadmill or get on a bicycle and do that really sort of get that rate of exertion up that you would see with aerobic exercise. But even doing something like stretching and balance and strength training can have a positive impact on your brain, even when you're having some early cognitive changes. Now, the next study I picked, and I want to say I am not an expert in all of these exercise studies. Okay, I thought I figured it out, but apparently I didn't. Oh, you really do have to point it out here. Did that one move? Okay. I did do a little bit of research on cycling. And so there are far more better experts in this room to talk about the benefits of cycling and brain health. But this study in particular, as you can see, showed that active commuting, and it involved bicycling and other modes of transportation, was linked to a 19% reduced risk of dementia and a 22% reduced risk of Alzheimer's. So dementia, the umbrella term, the cognitive loss, Alzheimer's is the biology that may be causing dementia, but as you heard from Jean, there are different types of dementia. This was a large study, a 13-year study that looked at over 480,000 participants. And what was really great about this study is it included people who have younger onset Alzheimer's as well, so people earlier than the age of 65. And when we saw younger people involved in this study, their risk of younger onset dementia dropped by up to 40%. So this really shows you that there is science and evidence behind cycling to show the improvement of how it can connect to brain health. But the real reason I think they invited me here today was to talk about the US Pointer study. It's something that's been part of my life now for the last almost decade, which was an opportunity for the Alzheimer's Association and researchers across the country to take evidence that we've heard from other studies and put it all together. So we know that dementia is on the rise. We are an aging nation, and I mentioned age is our biggest risk factor. And we know that having some of these cardiovascular risk factors like poor diet and lack of exercise can actually increase people's risk. And up until this point, there was growing evidence that doing these things individually, there's been lots of studies on diet and exercise, can actually have an impact on our brain health. Researchers across the globe wanted to ask the question, what happens if we combine those multiple lifestyles? Could we actually maximize the benefit? So we followed a study that was done in Finland that gave us positive results in 2015 called the FINGER trial that did a very similar study, but we wanted to replicate that here in the United States. And so what we set out to do was say, can we take older adults who are at risk for cognitive decline and have suboptimal health when it comes to eating right and exercising? Can we get them to change their behaviors and actually decrease their risk of Alzheimer's or dementia? We did this in a kind of a unique way because rather than just having an intervention and a control group, which they did in Finland, they had an intervention and then a group that just got regular standard care. We decided here in the United States that probably wasn't going to be apples to apples because even when we were recruiting, some of our participants didn't have a primary care physician. So we knew that what you got as a standard care wasn't going to look the same across the US. So we developed two interventions, self-guided and structured. They were different in design and implementation, but we wanted to see is there a difference. And so you can see here, the self-guided group met with an Alzheimer's Association navigator for 6 times over the 2 years that they were involved in the trial. And they were given the information, they were taught some of the basic concepts of the 4 domains, which included exercise, diet, cognitive engagement, as well as managing things like blood pressure, diabetes, and cholesterol. But they were sort of told, go out and make your own changes, right? Here's what you need to do. We'll encourage you a little bit across the way, but go out and make your own changes. The other group that got to participate in this is our structured intervention. I'm really struggling today. Okay. The structured group, as you can see, met 38 times. They had not only the navigator, who sort of was their cheerleader, but they had an interventionist. We had 5 sites across the US, including UC Davis, through under the direction of Dr. Rachel Whitmer and Dr. Sarah Farias, our principal investigators. And they also had an interventionist who was at UC Davis, who was an expert in diet and nutrition. And you can see here, they had a very specific way that we implemented these 4 domains to make these changes. What that actually looked like on paper is right here. This was the pointer prescription that we encouraged those in the structured intervention to follow. And you can see here it's based on 4 things. That exercise involved both aerobic as well as resistance training and strength and balance. We'd already learned from the Exert trial. We used something called the MIND diet, which is a combination of the DASH and Mediterranean diet, which is a 14-point scale. We wanted them to average 9.5 points per week or higher. We used a cognitive training program called Brain HQ, and then everybody participated in the same labs. Now, I'm going to share some results with you. This next slide is the only slide you're going to see for a marker for the self-guided arm, because the only thing we measured for them was attendance at those meetings. And you can see 94.8% of them attended all 6 of those team meetings over 2 years. What this shows us is that participants were engaged in this study. And as you can imagine, our structured group was a little bit lower, but they had more meetings. So that's the only measure you'll see for self-guided. What we found over time was that cognition function improved for both groups. So that's remarkable. Everybody started at what we call a Z-score. We wanted everybody to be measured with the same ruler, so everybody started at 0, and you can see over time cognitive function improved in both groups. Now, there is some concern that that might likely be due to practice. If you take the same cognitive training tests every 6 months, you may get a little bit better at them. However, when we really looked deep at the data, what we found was that the structured intervention, those that followed that prescription you saw a few slides earlier, had a statistically significant greater benefit on their cognitive function. And I think one of the greatest parts of this was that that extra benefit was the same, regardless if they were at risk from one of those other risk factors, like age, like genotype, like ethnicity, even their heart health. Even if they'd had high blood pressure, it didn't change that they still got the maximum benefit from participating in the structured intervention. What does this actually mean when we look deeper at the data? It means that we essentially were able to slow the cognitive aging clock on these individuals who participated in the structured intervention by about 2 years. So they were functioning at a level of someone that was 2 years younger. This is great news. This means that all of those things that we've learned about, that we've studied individually, can have the most potential benefit if we do combine them together. But it also shows us that what we've already known, which is what's good for the heart is good for the brain. It is important to know this only measures risk. We know there are things that people can do all of these things and still develop Alzheimer's disease, and research is racing fast ahead to try and answer why that question still exists and why we don't know the answer. But it is exciting to see, and because of that, we wanted to make all of this available to everybody. And so people in the community can log into something called Rethink Your Brain and actually get all the same tools and information that we taught during the US Pointer study. Additionally, we're working across communities to figure out now how to take this to the community. How do we get this into the hands of everybody? And I have to say, a day like today is just such a refreshing way to see how we make that possible, how community can come together. So thank you all so much. I hope this was an important way or an interesting way for you to start our information today. Whether you're caring for someone or just interested in learning more, the Alzheimer's Association is here, and Gene was kind enough to mention that building brain healthy habits. So he was kind enough to schedule one via Zoom, so that if anyone wants to learn a little bit more, you can follow this QR code and actually attend his own program where he teaches this to everybody. So thank you very much. It's my pleasure to turn it back to Lauren.
Alrighty, what a way to start the day. Thank you so much, Claire and Jean. I love learning that it's really these kind of everyday steps that can support our brain health and be so, so powerful. And also how the bike can really be a companion throughout our lives to help manage stress and stay healthy and active and really support brain health. So thank you too so much. Along that note, in the crowd here, as Esther and Ben mentioned, in Morgan Hill, we actually have our new cohort of Riding for Focus educators. Maybe you can give a little wave. So they'll be bringing our Riding for Focus middle school program back to their schools all across the U.S. and Canada to increase access to the benefits of biking for youth and middle school students. And I really hope these students will be imparted with this knowledge that we just learned from Claire and Jean, not only of how to ride the bike, but that the bike can kind of be that companion and support brain health throughout the lifespan, and as that kind of one step to start supporting brain health. So amazing. Next, we're going to hear from two incredible individuals, Dan Burden and Carol Kachadoorian, who have played impactful roles in the cycling world. They'll be speaking to their personal experiences with cycling and how they've launched really fruitful careers advocating for cycling and cycling access. So Dan is going to kick it off virtually for this session, followed shortly after by Carol. Let me expand our slides. Sorry. Whoop. All right, here we go. Awesome. And just a quick introduction of both Dan and Carol, and then I'll pass it over to Dan. So Dan Burden is a renowned expert in creating livable and walkable communities with over 40 years of experience in active transportation, planning, and urban design. He specializes in a wide range of areas, including trail design, safe routes to school, traffic calming, and complete streets. Dan is known for his ability to facilitate workshops, walking audits, and charrettes, bringing together diverse stakeholders. He's celebrated as a visionary urbanist, recognized by Time magazine in 2001 as one of the 6 most important civic innovators globally. Dan's expertise is in inspiring and guiding communities to prioritize people and place and design. And again, following him, we'll have Carol. Carol developed a love for active transportation while working for the Washington, D.C. Transit Agency, where she created and led the Office of Customer Access Programs. After leaving the transit agency, Carol was an active transportation planning consultant for 12 years, developing a practice area in older adult mobility and wellness. Given her age and lifestyle, Carol believes that her work life and personal life are nearly inseparable, maybe many of the bike people here. Her pioneering work, the 50+ Cycling Survey, offers important information about older cyclists that can be used to encourage continued cycling and cycling uptake. She recently moved to a new senior living community where she's working to ensure the built environment meets the needs of older adults, including racks in the bike storage room. Amazing. Through her work at Double Till Decor, now DTC, Carol's work focuses on the positive aspects of aging and disrupting stereotypes about aging. So we'll have Dan kick us off and then pass it on to Carol.
Terrific. And I'm delighted to be here, be part of this amazing group. I'm going to just quickly share how my life of bicycling led to where I am today. I'm 82 years old, still riding a bike, but in Port Townsend, Washington, I have to use an electric assist, but still find it very healthy. So every time I click, I'm not in control. Is that right? Someone is going to advance the slides? Yeah, there we go. So I think it's important to point out that today, children only get 10 minutes of outside time per day. That is very sad when you think about it. Prisoners are required to have 1 to 2 hours outside per day. So what have we done and how do we get back our health? Click. I suppose I just say click, or I could have a bicycle bell and I could ring it. So ask yourselves how much time you spent outside and how far you traveled when you were 8 years old. Click. Here's the interesting thing. The great-grandfather would go 8 miles at age 8, would go 6 miles to go fishing without an adult. The grandfather, it was down to a mile, the mother on top down to half a mile, and her son Ed now only goes to the end of the block. So we've changed so many things that are just robbing children of an active lifestyle. Click. So I'm going to celebrate first the early pioneers in health. Dr. Paul Dudley White, Eisenhower's heart surgeon, click, was an amazing individual who was able to, can we advance? Yeah. He not only really launched adult bicycling through all of his efforts, but he encouraged Eisenhower and others after Eisenhower had a serious heart attack. But he was a surgeon. He was a heart surgeon. Click. And then we now see the opportunity for all of CDC to be able to now embrace health through the blue zones. We'll get into blue zones a little bit further. Click. So this is me then and now. I'm currently in Buffalo. When I was in the Navy, I would take off and ride. It was my way of getting out and retaining my sanity. I'd ride to class every night and so on. But I dreamed of traveling much longer distances. Click. And I did this through the American Youth Hostels. I would lead bicycle trips to many parts of the U.S., and my wife, who was on this particular ride, would lead trips also in Europe, and found out how important the adventure of bicycling was. Click. This led to, as soon as I got out of the Navy, we made plans for doing a bicycle expedition from Alaska to Argentina. A couple, June and Greg Seipel, along with my wife and I, made that safari or trek. We were the first group to do that. June and Greg completed the journey. I came down with hepatitis at the top of Central America, but I went on to do the next thing. Click. But a little bit about this trip. Back then, when we did this in '72, it's written up in National Geographic, and indeed, it's the first bicycle expedition ever written up in National Geographic. May 1973, we had to prepackage our own food. You couldn't get affordable dehydrated food, so we dehydrated our own food. And we worked with Spence Woof for the first wide range derailleur to be on our bikes, and then for all of the equipment. Click. And made this journey an amazing trek from, again, Alaska down to Montana would be our first trek. And then we would continue on from there. But you can see the Spence Woof wide range gears made possible with his extender arm. Click. For me, the bicycling was a way to meet the world. That was a quest. I just had a desire to understand the world I lived in, travel through it, meet the many cultures. Click. And really take in all the various geographies of the North to Central South America. Click. And after we finished that trek, I was considered, even though I didn't have a college degree yet, I was considered a specialist, and I put together bicycle training courses, bicycle adventure touring, offered over 4 of those through the university. Click. And then started Bike Centennial, the event that sent 4,200 riders across America for the bicentennial, and we developed the Trans-America Trail. My wife laid out the trail. It's now the longest recreation trail in the world. But after that, I went to work in Florida. My notoriety was pretty well recognized. And I formed my own advisory council. Horace Huffman was part of the council. Many celebrities, Governor Bob Graham gave me free license to just change the way transportation was addressed in Florida. Click. And we built for Florida the first bike trail, many now since, but this is all part of my upbringing and development. Click. Which led to many people now coming to me and saying we needed to do more. So new urbanists and engineers, scientists, researchers, attorneys all came together, and we wrote the first book on how to build healthy streets. So we were advancing, we were going beyond just pure bicycling. So then eventually Dan Buettner, who launched Blue Zones, came to me. The medical facility said, we only do healthy places in theory when it comes to the built environment, but there's this one guy out there doing it. Click. This is Dan Buettner. He followed in my pedal strokes, I guess you could say. He bicycled Alaska to Argentina, then all of Africa, then around the world. Probably holds more Guinness World Records than any other bicyclist. But you can see the journey that we took in this first leg. Click. But Dan was a real researcher. He studied those places in the world where people outlive the number of years they're expected to live. And by taking all the principles or the concepts of how people lived, he then wanted to reverse engineer and apply that to the US. Click. And so what Blue Zones is all about really is to empower everyone everywhere to live better, longer, healthier, happier lives. Click. And this is just an example. It's a photo I took 3 weeks ago of, this is Niagara on the Lakes. It's not far from where I am right this moment. I'm in Buffalo. And cities that are built to be walkable, livable, are just, they naturally induce health. And the built environment is just essential that we get that right. Click. And a photo I took just last week down in San Diego, you can see the cycle track is so full that now they're giving permission for cyclists to take over the next lane. And it's amazing the things that some of our cities are now doing. But that has been the fulfillment of my life, is to be able to go out and make it possible for people to more safely and enjoyably be able to bike more places more of the time. I'm up in Buffalo getting ready to do that with 3 of Olmsted's original circles. We're working on all 3 of those this week. Click. And again, the goal now is to go beyond just bicycling and walking and urban design, to do everything it takes to change the built environment so that people, everyone, everywhere can live longer, better lives. Click. I now lead walking audits. It's one of my favorite things to do. We're training the young, usually graduate study engineers and planners how to design cities for people. So this keeps me young, and I'm so delighted that this original love of a bicycle led to this point in my career. With that, let's turn it over to Carol. Carol?
Thank you, Dan. I'm happy to be here, and I'll get started. You know, in my mid-50s, I took a look at my career and realized that a lot of what I was doing, I can turn this on, a lot of what I was doing was transportation, multimodal. I worked for a transit agency, started a bike system, worked on rail systems, access to transit. And the blend of the work that I did really was reflected in my life. And so that was in my mid-50s. By my mid-60s, I was working for a consulting firm doing multimodal transportation planning, including safe routes to school work. And I decided to develop a practice area for that consulting firm on older adult mobility and wellness. I was successful in that, but a few months later was laid off due to COVID. But the work I was doing needed to go on. I was doing a cycling survey, and I had a contract with AARP. So I started a nonprofit called Double Tilled Core, and I can tell you what that means if you ask me later. But now I'm in my early mid 70s, and I have transitioned Double Tilled Core to DTC. And the question I have is really, what's next? I am 73. I'll be 74 this November, and I remain committed to the work I do. The question is, how am I going to age, and how can I remain physically active? I am a caregiver. Gina and I were talking about this. My husband has dementia. He has mobility limitations. He has memory issues. He's an insulin-dependent diabetic, and I spent some of this afternoon trying to make sure he had his insulin, and there are people there to care for him. That's part of it. But I want to remain physically active, and I want to continue to do this work of ensuring that older adults can maintain independent mobility for all the reasons we've talked about in terms of brain health and social connectedness and well-being. And social support for older adults doing that is really important. So a lot of my work, in fact, all of my work really is grounded in 3 frameworks. One is the older adult typology of physical activity, which I developed while I was a consultant. And you can see there are 4 types of physical activity for older adults: frail, ambivalent, aspiring, and active older adults. And these are really based upon either ability and need or lifestyle and inclination. And the goal is to continue to go right and go up, regardless of your age. But remaining physically active can sometimes depend on where you live. Person-environment fit theory is exactly what you think it is. Does the built environment fit what you want to use it for, as well as local programs? Is there a cycling program nearby? Are there safe places to bike? If it doesn't, then you're going to go down and to the left on the typology. And the third is called life space mobility. This is something that was used primarily by health professionals to determine how independently somebody could be in leaving their bedroom, going into their living room, going into their yard. But what I say is when you step into the public right-of-way, that's where our work begins. And if we don't design the public right-of-way, those public spaces in a way that fits the activity, the physical activity that people want, then that doesn't work. So this really drives, these 3 frameworks, which are interconnected, really drive all the work that I do. Change. Okay, so in the fall of 2017, I was biking. I met a woman who was 78 at the time, and we started biking together and talking, and I learned about her biking habits and all, and I said, I'd like to talk with you some more. So we scheduled a time the next week to meet, and the day before, she emailed me and said, can't do it because I'm going to go golfing, which I thought was a good thing. I mean, she was going to be physically active. But I thought, gee, I had made a list of questions to ask her. So I thought, why don't I just put a survey together? I had access to a survey platform. So the survey is called the 50+ Cycling Survey. And part 1, if it'll come up, is a lot of demographics, cycling history, cycling preferences. There are 4 what I call life course questions in that survey. When did you start cycling? Did you stop cycling for a year at some point? Did you change your cycling in the past year? And can you see a time when you would stop cycling? The second part is a visual preference. There are photos, I think there are 17 or 18 photos of conditions, and you say if you would cycle there. And then there's a separate online journal, which has some open-ended questions in it as well. So that's the survey. We've done the survey for 5 years, and we have found that the work is really important because it's showing up here, but not there. There we go. It is one of a kind. It is across the U.S. and we added Canada in year 4. It has longitudinal data in it. It is for older adults only. It is not a multi-generational survey that maybe will get some older adults. It is only for people 50 and older. It is about cycling and mobility. It is not about needing somebody to drive you someplace because you've stopped driving or you can't get there on your own. And as I said, it's nationwide, both in the US and Canada. It does have longitudinal data. We started age 50 and we have people in their 90s that complete the survey, and we ask for age in 5-year increments so we can compare cycling by age groups within the survey, and because we've done the survey for 5 years, we can track changes over time, probably the greatest of which is the use of e-bikes. It is intended to inform planners, engineers, advocates, health professionals, and older adults about cycling. It does expand our knowledge about physical activity and aging. This is not an academic scientific study. It is really a life experience study that I compile the results from people that take the survey and learn about their experiences. Many of them say it's a way to assess their current cycling habits as they age, and if there are things if there needs to be an adaptation. Who's got the shirt that says "Aging is just another gear"? I took a photo of that. Yeah. So if you think of it that way, and if I had seen that before, I would have said that. And older adults appreciate being asked. Just today, I got an email from somebody asking about the survey, and he said at the very end of it, "Thank you for doing this work." So it is really important to do. Now, there's a lot of data. In year 4, we had 5,500 responses. In year 5, we had 2,700 responses. And there's a lot of data, a lot of questions, a lot of data. But in working with Blue Zones, we have identified, on a project, we have identified a few key findings. The first is, and I think the most important one, and perhaps the most expansive one, cycling supports identity, purpose, and quality of life. And that covers a lot of what we all think about and when we're cycling and why we cycle. The second is that cycling adapts as people age. It's another gear. And I'm really glad I saw that shirt because it's important. Not one size fits all. I have people who are 76 that respond to the survey and are still doing 40-mile rides, multiple times a week. I have people who are 76 saying, "I don't need to be doing 40-mile rides once a week. I'm going to change my expectation from cycling." The third is that e-bikes do provide independence and extends the ability of somebody to cycle and to remain social. It also is a safety thing. It's one of those adaptive things, but there's some people that don't want to get an e-bike. So we have a number of those that say they won't, but the use of e-bikes has grown. Fourth, cycling does bring social support and belonging, and we know that matters for brain health and for emotional well-being as well. On the other hand, caregiving responsibilities, as Jean learned and I have learned, can quietly reduce the amount of cycling that you can do. In addition to the negative things that you have to fight with when you're a caregiver, I frankly have less time to cycle, and I've lost my cycling partner. So it can affect that as well, and we need to find a way to combat that. And the last two, I think there's one more after this, but we've talked a lot, and Dan talked a lot about infrastructure design and maintenance. That's important, and it does guide everyday decisions. My husband and I, a year ago, moved into a brand new senior living community. The cycling around that community is not great. So it took me a long time to find a way to get to the trail so I can bike to the grocery store. But I don't bike on the street in front of our house because I was almost hit a couple of times. So that does affect. But safety is about infrastructure. It's also about confidence as well. And lastly, a lot of people say in the survey that they would stop cycling if they had some kind of physical injury. But it doesn't need to be the end of cycling. It's a turning point, and we can go back to the adaptation and the purpose, and identity. So the question is, what do we do with all this data? There are a number of things that we can do, and I'm going to ask you to think about what you're doing in your work and how you can affect a change. The first is we need to focus on the outcomes of mobility and wellness, all the wellness factors for older adults. And so think about how the work that you do can either change to better affect older adults or currently does affect the wellness for older adults. Secondly, learn from older adults about what they need. The survey like this, done locally, can tell you a lot about the older adults who are cycling in your community and what they need. I once talked with a woman named Maddie Brosen that's at UCLA and does a lot of work on older adult mobility, and she said, we have to stop designing facilities for younger, fitter people and then saying to older adults, you figure out how to use it, or you need to learn how to use it. We need to be building facilities and programs that fit older adults. Be interdisciplinary. You might be a health professional, you might be an engineer, but remember to look at the other professions and see how your work can support one another and accomplish that goal. This is the one that I tend to get really passionate about. I am really, really, really tired of hearing that older adults are overrepresented in the crash data. So people blame age for crashes when they're not doing their homework to do the design work. So I think we need to take a look at what facilities are best suited for older adults and design them for older adults. Longer signal crossing times, lower curbs, better signage at decision points, because we know sometimes older adults take a longer time to make those decisions. So that's really important. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do is to maybe do something that hasn't been done before. Be creative. Try something very different. So I don't know, do we have time for the epilogue? Did I use up all my time? It's a minute? Okay. This is one of my favorite, if it'll play.
Back in the day when pots and pans could talk, which indeed they still do, there lived a man that went to the river every day and filled 2 pots with water. Well, one day, one of the pots developed a small crack. And as time went on, that crack widened until by the time the man got home, all the water had leaked out of the pot. Finally, the pot turned to the man and said, please, every day you take me to the river. Every day the water leaks out. Please, replace me with another pot. And the man turned to the pot and said, look down the trail. And the pot looked down the trail. And on the side of the trail with the pot that didn't have a crack, it was craggy and rocky. But on the side of the path with the pot with the crack, wildflowers grew. The man said, every day you water those flowers. Every day you make my difficult journey beautiful. I think I'll keep you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Carol and Dan. That was incredible. We're gonna move into our break time. Carol is here in person, so if you have questions, and she'll also be tabling during the expo, so I highly recommend you find her. But just wanted to ask, who here is ready to bike from Anchorage down to Argentina together on a mission to spread cycling's awareness about cycling's impact on brain health and well-being? It's so incredible. Dan, to hear the stories, and then Carol, of course, the work you're doing with the 50+ cycling survey is so important, and you've been such a driver in this field. So it's amazing that we get to learn from both of you today. But yeah, we'll take about a 5 to 10 minute break and then call you all back into the room afterward. But please find the speakers and ask them your burning questions.